Hello, everyone, and welcome to the evening of patch notes. My voice is a little patchy because I just spent the last good number of hours 3, 4, 5 hours going over the patch notes, reading through them in their entirety, and talking over my stream, or talking them over with my stream, rather. So, I wanted to do something different than a full patch notes reading here because I'm sure there's a dozen of those out on YouTube already, and I just read through them all, so my voice is, as I said, already a little shot. So, what I've done is I've put together in each of three categories that I arbitrarily came up with myself: skills, item balance, and classes. Some winners and losers, as I've termed it. Things that have come out of the patch notes looking shiny and wonderful, and you should play them, and strong. One of those things wasn't an adjective. And things that have come out looking very, crinkled and trashy and thrown into the corner and neglected. Or, of course, hit by the nerf bat. So, let's get started then. I've got them written down here, and I'll read through my notes for you. As far as skills go, which we will scroll down to the skills section here. This is some of the new skills. This is some of the changes to the skills. I think the biggest winner here is one that didn't show up: Arc. There are basically no changes in the patch notes that affect Arc at all. And Arc Totems is walking away pretty significantly buffed, if anything. This skill will still be very strong. So if it was one of your planned League starters to go Arc Traps, Arc Totems, Arc Mines, yeah, you can always fall back on that. I think it'll be quite strong still. Our silver medal winner here is going to be not really a specific skill, but rather cast on crit. This is more of an archetype, I guess, though GGG is kind of using that word for something else, but I'll use it here. Either way, the buffs to cast on crit are rather significant, and some of the supporting cast around it, Mjolnir and Kozfreeze, are being shined up a bit too. I wouldn't really necessarily recommend cast on crit to someone as a League starter, particularly if it's your first time with it, but expect to see a lot of cock next League, nonetheless. For our bronze winner, we actually have a specific skill that's mentioned in the patch notes for a change of pace here. That's going to be Vortex. Vortex is really only in the bronze spot and not further up, because there don't appear to be any area changes for it, and its area is pretty bad, and this skill is essentially tied to being used in tandem with Frostbolt to get multiple casts out to avoid the cooldown if you want it to be good. Generally speaking, the more hoops you have to jump through in reaching the good thing your build is attempting to do, like a cooldown and having to be used with another skill, the more likely it is to not really be worth doing. That said, the base DPS on the dot from Vortex is just absolutely massive now, almost 1,500 and double the old value. I think probably Vortex will see use as a secondary or tertiary skill in a more generally cold dot-focused build, some sort of occultist possibly, since there's changes to that. But let's not get too far ahead of ourselves. Our bronze loser, that's going to be Tectonic Slam. The skill is strictly seeing a buff here, I think, which is why it's not further down this list, but it seems like the baseline has been raised and there's a chance to gain the significant benefits randomly now. That's the thing, though. This charged buff is an entirely random 35% proc chance, making the skill feel unreliable. Even if it's strong, I think it's going to end up feeling bad to play. The Helmet enchant added further on in the patch notes does allow for up to another 20% proc chance from Uber Labyrinth, but and that might be enough. 55% proc rate seems, starting to be fairly reasonable and probably quite powerful. But I'm just not a fan of a Helmet enchant being that mandatory in the first place. Also, bronze loser, for anyone maybe confused, is the best loser spot. That means you lost the least. So it's in rank 3 losers. It's buffed. It's better than it was before, but I'm still disappointed because really just the changes weren't that interesting. And I don't really like the direction that the design was taken. But Tectonic Slam is certainly better than it was before, and if you're interested in using it, probably go ahead. Silver loser, Molten Strike. Honestly, it was kind of difficult to tier this and the Tectonic Slam changes. Molten Strike is, in my opinion, still perfectly viable as an option and probably still competitive. However, there's no denying that the changes to Wildfire and the Helmet enchant will have a significant impact on Molten Strike builds. But this is somewhat compensated for by the changes to the base gem itself. Let me find it. It's getting just percent damage buffs. 120% is becoming 147, and 40% less is becoming 30% less. It's losing projectile count, but it's still going to have a pretty hefty projectile count. You might just be more funneled into playing specifically like a Grelwood Molten Strike build rather than having more options going in because of the power of the Jewel, which has been nerfed to a count of only 1 on your tree. Our gold loser. This is a tie between a lot of different things. Basically, every stat-sticking dual-wield skill takes this spot. The removal of stat-sticking in attack builds outside of Spectral Shield Throw was a railway spike in the coffin, not a nail in the coffin. But it was hammered home even further by the addition of a nerf which cuts Shaper stat stick percent as extra mods in half. So even if you roll a really good foil with a percent gained as extra mod, it's going to be half as powerful as it was before. You probably saw this spot coming, but it's here for good reason. These nerfs are devastating. All right, on to item balance. And I did these in an order that wasn't the order they were listed in the patch notes. Probably silly of me, but nonetheless. Our gold winner, and it's hard to visually sort through this, so we're going to use our Control F function to do that, is Doriani's Fist. I don't know if this is really going to be the most impactful, used, and powerful item around next League. I don't think every build is going to be touching God on the regular. However, this item certainly saw the most extreme of all the changes. It went from 350% effectiveness of added damage on the touch of God, which did get an attack speed nerf, by the way, 50% less instead of 30%, up to 600% effectiveness of added damage. This is a total increase buff. The attack speed nerf I don't think is hefty enough to outdo the percent added damage, but more importantly than that, it's going to be a buff to the individual hit damage and a massive buff. So you could potentially do things like Stormfire Ignite because it fully converts Fizz to Lightning, so you're doing a massive lightning damage hit to Ignite Prolif off. You could just clear the map with Smite, and when you get to the boss, you smack the boss once with your Doriani's Fist, and most likely one-shot them, especially if you're using Esh's Mirror and getting flat lightning stacks off of that as you're going. 600% effectiveness is absurd. 350% effectiveness was already the highest in the game available on anything at all. 600% effectiveness is absolutely batshit crazy. Doriani's Fist will at the very least see some play. As I said, I don't think it's going to be meta-defining or meta-breaking, but it's the most extreme change, so I thought it deserved this spot. Our silver winner is Kozpri's Malice and Mjolnir. And now Mjolnir is, in these changes in a few spots, the cooldown trigger of 150 milliseconds down from 250. This also has been confirmed by Bex, I believe on Reddit or Twitter, and outside of the patch notes, to also be affecting Kozpri's Malice. It's getting the same change, down from 250 to 150 milliseconds. This is another tie. I know I'm kind of cheating, but it's only a two-way tie this time. And I considered giving this spot to just Kozpri's. If it weren't for the strength of Arc, I think it would have gone that way. But Mjolnir being able to make use of Arc and Kozpri's not kind of bridged that gap. Either way, the reduction of cooldown on these items combined with buffs to cast on crit means I expect to see a lot of them. Our bronze winner. This one might not be quite as expected, but I'm actually really excited about the changes to Arakali's Fang. This unassuming little dagger is getting a complete makeover, and it seems to be packing something of a punch here. The downside is that you're only getting the sockets in the dagger itself to support your spiders with. But I think the numbers on the spiders, because they are fairly high, the proc rate trigger is pretty high, and the more damage and always poison on hit is actually pretty big too, and a 30-second base duration. That plus a lack of a cap means that if you can get a build going fast enough that properly attributes kills to the players, now remember, any damage over time kill is attributed to the player. So that means that if your spiders are killing things with poisons, that poison is being attributed to you, so the Arakali's on kill effect will proc and raise more spiders. So if you can build these guys around poison, maybe there's a place for an Envy spider build out there. I'm not sure. There's a reason this is in the bronze winner spot. This one is much more theoretical than the others, but I think the changes to Arakali's Fangs are really, really exciting, and I'm very excited to see what much more competent summoner players can do with it than me, and I'm going to give it a try myself at some point. Probably not as a league starter, but I want to play around with this item. It seems really cool. Have a giant army of tiny little spiders following me around. All right, on to the losers in the itemization. Bronze loser, taking home the, I guess, most coveted loser prize, is Impulse's Broken Heart. Impulse's is escaping the nerf bat with a bruising, but I'm more of the opinion that it's still going to be a powerful option. 5% max health explosions are half of what it had before at 10% on a max roll, but still more than enough to be an incredible boon to clear speed for many builds. And it's not like this chess piece has that many other downsides to speak of. It's got life, it's got damage, it's got shock effect, it's got a bunch of other good stuff still. I think Impulses is going to be just fine, which maybe isn't a good thing, but it's going to be fine either way. Still on the list, though, because it is, of course, receiving something of a nerf. And a lot of these items just aren't. Most of this list is buffs, so it was hard to find a lot of losers. Silver Loser, Queen of the Forest. GGG's favorite punching bag, back in their sights again. Queen of the Forest is in for some very rough treatment in 3.5. This could well be the nerf that pushes it out of the limelight. Here, we'll go ahead and find it. It grants 1% increased movement speed per 600 instead of 450 evasion rating, making it harder to reach your movement speed cap, and said movement speed cap has been brought down to 75% instead of 100%. It also affects all versions of the items, so there's no legacy versions. Screw you, standard, I guess. With options like Loreweave, and Loreweave actually sort of receiving a buff, I'll go into that in a moment, and Impulsa still floating around, I don't think Queen of the Forest really makes the cut anymore. You can never really fully count out a hefty movement speed item, but I think we're as close to it as possible. And on the topic of that Loreweave thing, the changes to Topaz, Ruby, and Sapphire flasks are a buff to Loreweave because they no longer give max res, they give reduced cold fire or lightning damage taken, respectively. And that will stack with the resistance, the maximum resistance that Loreweave sets your resistances to. So you can use those flasks without, giving up on their reduced elemental damage mods now because it works differently than max res. So Loreweave getting a buff going into this, I think Loreweave is going to be king, Impulse is going to be queen, and Queen of the Forest is going to be the jester. Gold Loser. And this is one I did not really see coming at all, but it is Chinsoul. It was used pretty much exclusively for the 100% more arrow damage at close range, not the DPS value. So getting this number, the 100% more damage with arrowheads at close range, cut down to 50%, is not at all made up for by 200 to 260% fizz damage scaling instead of 150 to 180. Really, this was used super often in things like Ellie Hit or Scourge Arrow or other Ellie stacking bow builds that just don't care about the PDPS at all. The low attack speed was already an issue for some of these builds, and edging it out against other really nice Shaper Bow options, and I think now Chinsoul is just not really a consideration unless you're working on a very constrictive budget, or you're maybe doing something in Solo Self-Found, and it's all you've got lying around. Alright, lastly, I want to go on to the class and ascendancy changes, and I'm going to cheat again here a little bit. I don't know why I bother introducing these rule systems if I'm just going to step outside of them at every given opportunity, but hey, it's my video, I get to decide what to do. There's only going to be one winner and one loser because there were not nearly as many class changes as there were skill changes and introductions, as well as item changes. So, the gold winner, by default, because there's only one, is Occultist. It was already a competitive option for many different playstyles, from minion playstyles to things like Blade Vortex to damage over time to support builds as curse supports, and now it seems like she's merely expanding her repertoire into cold damage over time as we head into Betrayal. Frigid Wake is arguably one of the best ascendancy nodes in the game now. It includes damage scaling. Let's find it actually so I can go over every piece with you. It includes, I even left this out of my script, but it includes damage scaling in the form of 20% cold damage over time multiplier. It includes defensive utility with cannot be chilled, cannot be frozen, and freeze nearby enemies every 3 seconds, and have a chance to freeze nearby unique enemies every 3 seconds, and just straight up 10% reduced damage from hits if you're consistently chilling everything, which, hey, if you're playing a build like Vortex, or you're playing a build like Cold Snap, or even Arctic Breath, you're going to be doing that to everything around you all the time pretty consistently. So this is half of a Fortify, plus can't be chilled, can't be frozen, plus some damage, plus freeze everything nearby you on a clock. Frigid Wake is insane, and Occultist is going to be played a lot next league. In addition to that, we're getting, buffs to Void Beacon to help support the cold damage playstyle, and honestly, also Withering Presence is pretty good, but I think it's a bit outperformed by Frigid Wake. Our gold loser, by default, because there's only one class in this list, is Berserker. It's not mentioned here. Again, I'm sort of cheating like I did with Arc, but Berserker has been floundering for a while now, and none of the changes introduced with stat sticks, banners, or the new skills really scream any sort of synergy with the class or allow for any breathing room from it that it was currently being hampered by. Berserker wasn't not being played because stat sticks were holding it back or something. It's just not very good and isn't the best option for the majority of builds or playstyles, if not basically all of them. Hopefully 3.6 addresses this somewhat. There were a lot of changes, so I can definitely understand some things flying under the radar, but I would like to see Berserker changed if we can. That'd be great. Get back to me on that one, I guess. That's going to be it, though. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please leave a comment below letting me know. And if you didn't and you have some constructive, or I guess maybe even destructive criticism, you can go ahead and comment that below the video too. I'm always interested to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. Have a good night.